bringing in the sheaves, bringing in the sheaves. We shall come rejoicing, bringing in the sheaves, bringing in the sheaves, bringing in the sheaves. We shall come rejoicing, bringing in the sheaves. So you might wonder what we're doing in a small country church in the middle of Kansas, singing Bringing in the Sheaves. It can only mean one thing. Today we're going to talk about Little House on the Prairie.
Save me a piece of that corn.
Do 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 do. Do do do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do.
Good morning. This is Zaldamo here, along with my co-host,
Half Pint.
Welcome to our special edition, Little House on the Prairie cast. In honor of Charles Ingalls, or at least the Charles Ingalls played by
Michael
Landon. I've got the good V-neck going here. Got the overalls. As you might remember from the show, Michael Landon usually either had no shirt on for no apparent reason or a very generous V-neck going on. And I didn't go all the way out and totally oil up my body because he was always nice and shiny.
That would have been too glorious for the camera. So.
Yeah, I didn't want to blind everyone.
Right.
And maybe he was just trying to show everybody he was glistening from a hard day's work. He was nice and sweaty. I don't know.
Yeah. So why are we doing this?
So, last year, actually on Christmas Eve, we moved to our very own Little House on the Prairie. And we absolutely love it. And we had a streaming service that had all of the episodes of Little House. So we thought, hey, we're living out here on the prairie. Let's watch every episode of Little House on the Prairie and all the special episodes
We
they
did
did.
it.
So we made it through, what was it, 9 seasons?
Yes,
9 seasons. And each one had like 20-some episodes.
And 3 specials, 3-hour-long specials.
Yeah. So
They seemed like they were an hour long anyway.
So growing up, I had seen Little House occasionally from time to time, but not more than a handful of episodes since I grew up basically without TV, kind of like Little House on the Prairie.
Yeah.
But now I've packed the whole 9-year show into just, 2 or 3 months. We saw them all.
Yeah.
Quite the milestone.
Yeah, it was with every single meal that we ate, we watched an episode practically every day.
Yeah, and sometimes an extra episode when we were winding down at night before bed.
Right. It was fun because, you're going to have a wholesome show and it has plenty of subject matter to make fun of. It was great.
And I think you notice more too. We probably noticed a lot of things that if you watched the show growing up and you watch it over the course of the 9 years, you probably didn't notice a few things. Like in our intro, Bringing in the Sheaves, you probably wouldn't notice that if you're watching because it wasn't in every episode, but it was spread out over several episodes. But we started noticing a pattern that whenever the church was letting out, they always sang Bringing in the Sheaves.
That's right. It's a good one.
Yeah.
We looked for the song in the hymnal at that church. We couldn't find it. But luckily, John is a genius. And
thank you, John.
All we had to do was hum the song and he instantly knew how to play it.
Yeah. And I think he knew it previously as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just funny. We started noticing, hey, every time it's the same hymn. I think one time out of the 9 years, one time they were playing a different hymn.
Yes.
And we were like, what?
That
What's
was
going
the
on?
last episode.
Yeah, and they decided to break their tradition and do a different hymn.
So wrong. But the last episode was so right in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was.
So what was your favorite episode?
Oh man, it's so hard to pick one episode out of all of them. But I think my favorite was the episode where the Ingalls girls kept getting bullied by was it one boy or two boys?
It was one boy. He was part of a bully family.
Oh,
It
okay,
was
yeah.
an episode called The Bully Boys.
Yeah, and nobody would stand up to him because, he was bigger than everyone and stronger than everyone. But the Ingalls girls made everybody realize that, hey, he might be individually stronger and bigger than all of us, but collectively, we can take him on. And it was just awesome. Near the end of the episode, all of a sudden the kids, like, their eyes kind of opened. They realized what they could do. And they all just swarmed the bully and just started beating him down.
It was mostly little girls.
Yeah. And he couldn't, he could handle 2 or 3 kids, but he couldn't handle like 15 little kids
Right.
pounding on him. So I like that, the strength in numbers. So, and I like that, just kind of, to me, it's a reflection on real life, how a lot of times it's people in power that kind of push everyone around because the people won't stand up. And collectively, if we stand up to a bully, then, we have a lot of power in numbers.
Right. Good life lessons from Little House.
And how about you? What was your favorite?
Well, I had 2 favorites, and they were kind of a carryover from my childhood because, unlike him, I did watch Little House growing up. And the 2 episodes that really stuck with me, even seeing them a second time all these years later, was the first one was The Lord is My Shepherd. It was season 1, episode 13. And that's when Laura is upset because her brother died, and she was already jealous of the little brother, and she thought if she climbed a mountain and got closer to God, then maybe he'd listen to her and take her to heaven instead of the little boy that she thought her dad always wanted more than her. And that really impacted me in that there's this mysterious stranger that's taking care of her along the way, and you're made to think that he might be an angel at the end. I just thought that was a really special episode. Wasn't in the Little House on the Prairie series books, but near everything in the television series wasn't. And the second episode that I've always really enjoyed is The Wolves, and it's when a pack of wild dogs just comes through and ravages everything, and all the wild, like, they're happy little dogs. There's a pack of dogs with all sizes of dogs, and as they come running down the hillside ready to destroy these farm animals, they're like wagging their tails and they're all happy. But I always loved that episode.
Yeah, there's so many good episodes. It's really hard to pick a favorite. One of our favorite things about Little House is just seeing that how this show on network television was just so overtly Christian. I mean, the messages were overtly Christian. It was full of prayer, full of scripture. Just the principles that you were supposed to learn and pick up from the show were also just very godly, Bible-centered scriptures. It wasn't, they didn't present the Ingalls to be the perfect family. They obviously had their flaws. I mean, Charles was ready to punch out anybody at a moment's notice, but they always showed that, they would always come back to the truths of the Bible. And it's just neat that just, I don't know what, 30, 40 years ago, this was on network television. Just nothing but a Christ-centered type of show, in our childhood. Very fascinating.
So as we were watching this show, we noticed that the writers kept coming back to certain themes. And can you share what some of those themes were?
Oh, yeah. So one of the themes, of course, you got Nellie. She's just a pill most of the time.
Right.
And then the other theme was kind of like, what can we do to Mary this week? So poor Mary, who I guess did go blind in real life, but on the show, she not only went blind, but she lost, I think she lost one baby in childbirth, right?
No, she lost a baby, her one baby that she had.
Oh, I'm probably thinking of Carolyn.
Oh, no, wait. Yeah, she had a miscarriage. You're right. I forgot about that.
So she had a miscarriage, and then when she finally did have a baby, then it was burned in a house fire. You know, it was
Right.
caught in a house fire and burned up. And it's just like...
And she went blind.
And she went blind,
Yeah.
and...
She almost died from an infection when she was a little girl.
Right. And she nearly burned down just about everything on the show.
Right.
At some
That was
point.
another theme with her.
What are
was
all the things?
Fire.
What are all the things she burned down?
Well, she burnt what I remember it being more fire based, but she burnt down the barn because of she knocked over a lamp, and then she burnt down the countryside because her eyeglasses caught the dry brush on fire,
Which
and
actually ended up saving them.
Yeah,
Because then
and-
they were able to find... That's when their wagon had crashed.
right, and so she's blind, and so of course they send out the blind girl to go wander around and try to find help, because the other two people are either pinned underneath the stagecoach, or they're busy having a baby in the stagecoach after it crashed and tumbled down the... Which was awesome when you see these stagecoaches or these wagons tumble down the hills when they do those type of stunts. You know, it's really... It must have been a lot of fun while you're on the set to perform these. But, yeah, so she would go around setting things on fire and having bad tragedies happen to her. And in an interview, the actress Melissa Sue Anderson said that she left the show because at that point there was no other tragedy that they could come up to befall her. So what was another theme that you noticed going throughout the show?
I think one of my favorite themes was loyalty and friendship.
Yeah.
One of my favorite characters, probably my favorite character out of all the characters are fascinating. But I think Isaiah Edwards was my favorite character. And what I loved about him is he truly exemplified like loyalty and friendship, because whatever crazy harebrained scheme Charles wanted to get into, sometimes he would say, "Oh, we shouldn't do that, Charles," and "Oh, no, that's not a good idea." But when Charles would say, "Well, I'm going to do it. You can be in or out," he'd always be like, "Well, you know, I'm going to be with you." And so he'd get involved, and sometimes it was a fist fight, or sometimes it was out looking for revenge for somebody that had done something. But yeah, I loved the loyalty of that friend that was always there for them in thick and thin, and just he had a hard life throughout the show as well. Like a lot of tragedy befell him, but Charles was always there for him, and he was always there for Charles, and just their friendship was just a really special thing.
And did you know that his character portrayed on the show was close to the real life character? The real life character was also very loyal and ended up being the reason that the Ingalls were able to get a homestead in a certain area. There were people that were going to push Charles out of the line and rush in and make a claim where they knew he wanted it. And so Edwards was a big old man, just like in the show, and he cleared the line out so that Charles could go in.
Pretty awesome.
So he was a hero in real life too.
That's awesome. I like that. Okay.
So there's also another big theme of the show that we like to make fun of, and that is that it's basically shows entitled Charles Solves Blank while shirtless. But he solves... What were the things that Charles solved from life?
Well, I remember one of the episodes he solved racism.
Right?
Yeah, and I thought, man, if we only had Charles Ingalls today, because he just really made everybody see why it was wrong, and everybody was like, "Oh, okay, we see."
Yeah, it wasn't just one episode either, because I went through the episode descriptions to kind of jog my memory for this podcast, and he solved racism about 5 times. He did a good job.
He also solved marital problems. A couple of his friends were heading toward a divorce, and Charles just jumped in and solved it. Like, pretty easily, and he solved it kind of by laughing at them. Do you remember? They were sitting in the church, and he just started laughing, and they were like, "What are you laughing about?" And he just, I can't remember how he said it.
You're so stupid.
Next thing you know, everybody's laughing, and then they decided not to get a divorce. It's pretty awesome. What else did he solve? I can't think of anything.
So he solved child abuse. There was a couple episodes where child abuse was happening, and he stepped in, and he would solve orphanism a couple times there, where there was suddenly orphans for him to find homes for. And he did that in a couple different times, like earlier in the show history, and then later on in the show history, he himself adopted a couple kids, which is very Midwest.
Yeah.
They got that one on the dot.
Yeah, adoption is a huge thing out here in the Midwest. We meet so many families. I don't think I've ever lived anywhere. We've always had friends and people we knew that adopted. But out here, it's just like so common. Just like so many people we've met in our short time here have had adopted children. And not just one. Oftentimes, it's 2-3 kids that they adopt. And we think that probably is related to...
the orphan trains. There's a big museum, the National Orphan Train Museum in Concordia, Kansas. And it tells the story about why there ever was an orphan train. There was these little kids that was a big problem in New York City. There were so many children that were orphaned or just set out into the streets to fend for themselves because their parents couldn't take care of them. And it was just a huge problem. And then a priest came up with a solution, and that was to send them out to the Midwest, because he knew that a lot of farms out there had families that needed extra farm work, and so they might as well raise a few kids while they're at it. And listening to the stories of these orphans, most of the time the orphans found good, solid homes and a good solution to being starved, on the streets. So it turned out to be a happy ending for a majority of the children, but they were just kind of set on these trains and then
just
sit off, and then they would make different stops. They would get the kids out onto the platform, and then people would come by and pick out a kid.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, we first heard about the orphan train when we were in North Platte, Nebraska, at the Golden Spike Railroad Tower, which is a cool thing to see. And they had a little tribute to it. And now we've discovered that here in our neck of the woods in Concordia, there's a whole museum, which, we need to go see the museum.
We're
dedicated
ashamed
to it.
we haven't seen it yet.
Oh, the shame.
And so I also noticed, speaking of children, it was this ridiculous theme throughout the show of Carolyn saying, "Oh, why can't I give my husband a son?" And every time she was pregnant, she'd be saying, "It's a boy, it's a boy, I know it's a boy." And she'd be disappointed over and over and over and again. In real life, she did give birth to a son that later died in infancy. And that also happens on the show. And so she never really, spoiler alert, she never really gets to the point where she gives Charles a son. And I think that when he later adopts Albert, I think that fills the void. Oh, actually, he adopted 2 boys.
Right.
So he has plenty of sons. So she can stop whining about giving him a son.
It all worked out in the end. Right. Oh, and we should give a shout out to our favorite. Who's our favorite orphan kid?
Orphan kid? Oh, she's the best.
Yeah.
And everybody hates her. It's that Nancy. She was the substitute for Nellie.
Yep. Yeah, that was also one of my favorite episodes when so Harriet and Nels, their daughter ends up getting married and moving out of town, so she has this void for a daughter. And if you know, Nellie was like spoiled rotten, and she was just a total pill to everybody. And then so she's got this void, needs another daughter to spoil. So they go to the big city, and they're at the orphanage. And then they look, and they can't. None of the kids seem to fit the bill. And then they hear this one kid like screaming and running around the building, and they're like, "Who's that?" And they're like, "Oh, That's Nancy. No, you don't. We're trying to get her out of here to another orphanage. We can't handle her. And she's just this total wild, crazy kid, and just totally reminds Harriet of her daughter. And then she's, in the end, she's like, oh, she's perfect, and ends up taking her. And she's basically like the spitting image of Nellie.
Yeah,
on the show.
She was perfect. And that kind of brings us to, you mentioned your favorite character, Mr. Edwards. My favorite character was Mrs. Olson. Oh, she's just deliciously wicked. She's so great, and she's so entertaining and funny. She was such a fine actress. I'm always looking forward to watching an episode where she's like the main star, the main focus.
And what's her catchphrase?
For heaven's sakes. I don't think I did that right even.
It's like, oh, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah, that's better. That's better.
She says that like probably 10 times per episode. Pretty awesome.
So what do we got here? So you mentioned a favorite moment when adopting Nancy, and also we kind of went over like we have a favorite saying for Nancy also. Whenever somebody says no to her, she'll always say, "You hate me," and run off. We love that.
Everybody hates me.
So what was our third favorite moment?
Was when Nellie declared her love for Percival. So Percival, they opened a restaurant and Nellie was supposed to run it.
So who for the people who haven't watched the show, who's Nellie and who's Nellie in the show?
So Nellie is the daughter of Nels and Harriet. Olson, yeah, and they run the mercantile. And then for their daughter's graduation gift from school, they open a restaurant/hotel called like Nellie's Restaurant and Hotel, and it's supposed to be this huge surprise, and she's going to run it, but she absolutely hates it. She can't cook a lick. She doesn't do good with anything.
Why does she need a restaurant to find a husband?
Yeah. So anyway, they're just struggling. People are coming in and they're like, "Oh, this food is awful," and everybody hates it. Oh, quick shout out to the one actor. Oh, I wish I knew his name. Didn't look him up. But there's this one guy that's not in any other place on the show. You don't know who he is. I don't think they ever even mention his name. No. But he's always in the restaurant. He's always complaining like, "Where's my food?" and stuff. And I just love that because you have no idea who the guy is, and it's a small town. You think he would appear in other episodes, but
I think there was more than one time he got food thrown at him as well.
Yeah.
Just because the servers are so frustrated at him.
So I just want to give a shout out to that dude. Hey, if you know who he is, put him in the comments down below. We'd love to hear. But anyway, so the parents end up deciding to bring this guy from the city. His name is Percival. He's a Jewish dude, and he's supposed to be like an expert at running like restaurants and stuff. So they bring him in, and he's just having a tough time because Nellie and her mom are just the honoriest of people. And and at one point he says something to her. What is the line he says to her first?
Well, he's really fed up with her because I believe she just refused outright to cook. And he then says back to her something to the effect of, "I don't know why I'm doing this. You don't want to do this. I don't want to be here. You don't even need this restaurant. You're so pretty. You don't need a restaurant to find a husband." And then he dumps like a egg mixture or something over Nellie's head. And so you think she's going to be furious, and he storms out of there.
And then she says, "He thinks I'm pretty."
And then all of a sudden, she's googly eyes for him.
And he's this little short guy too, and she's like several inches taller than him. But anyway, then she's just enamored with him. But he's supposed to go back in a couple days to New York or wherever he's from. I think it was New York. And who is she talking to? She's talking to somebody about it. And she's like, "What if you love somebody and this and that?" And they say, well, whoever she was talking with, I think it might have been her dad. anyway, they tell her, well, you just tell the person that you love them. So Percival's about ready to get on the stagecoach and leave town. So she comes out, and he's kind of like, oh, see you later, bye-bye, or whatever. And then she just like gets up the courage and says, Percival? And he's like, yes. And she's like, I love you. And then he's like, oh, I love you too.
He's like, jackpot.
And then he's like, well, we should get married. Just like that.
She says, okay. And then how does he announce this to her parents?
I can't remember. I think doesn't he just say, we're getting married?
Yeah, when?
Oh yeah, I think he says tomorrow or something.
Yep, and so they got married the next day.
So they got married the next day, and up to this point, neither of them even knew they liked each other. She was just happy because somebody had said she was pretty.
Right. And so your favorite frequent flyer was the guy at the restaurant that always complained.
Yeah.
Mine was Eddie Quillen. I think I'm saying his name right. I'm not sure, but he was hilarious because he would pop in as different characters along the way, and he started off playing a snarky transient of the countryside that Charles picks up when he's trying to get to Mankato or Sleepy Eye on a shortcut. And then he's a snarky train hobo, and then he's a snarky bar patron. And he always has these little quips that are just real zingers against Charles, especially.
And here's a fun fact I wanted to mention, that just doing a little research for this, I discovered that Melissa Gilbert, who played Half Pint, a.k.a. Laura Ingalls Wilder, and Willie Olson on the show were in real life adopted siblings. So they had been adopted by the same parents at different points. So that was just wild to think that they were, in real life, they weren't brother and sister on the show, but they were in real life, even though I read that they're kind of estranged now and they don't really talk to each other anymore.
Right.
Which is sad, but...
I thought it was interesting that Willie went off to become a lawyer.
A lawyer.
In New York City.
New York City.
So, when we looked into the characters of the show, like the actors that played them, in real life, they were a lot different than they were on the show. It seemed like both Melissa Gilbert, who played the middle child, Laura, the main character in Little House on the Prairie, and then her older sister, Mary, who's played by Melissa Sue Anderson, they both seemed kind of worldly when you look at their real lives, much more into Hollywood than you would think of actresses that are doing this wholesome Christian
Right.
Little House on the Prairie show. And I was really surprised when I heard the lady that played Nellie. Her name is Allison Arngrim, and she said that when she was a kid, people would be so mad at her for the character that she played on the show. I guess she was such a good actress that they'd come up and spit on her and yell at her for being mean. But in actuality, whenever I hear her speak, she's hilarious in real life. So I think she's a real kick in the pants in real life, and nothing like her character. She seemed like full of joy and really positive about everything. And yeah, I just think it's interesting that the actresses are actually quite different from the character that they portray on screen. And so you know that they're good.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, all the actors in the show were pretty awesome. It was kind of neat because when Michael Landon cast the show, he mostly picked up actors and actresses that were not known very well. They were kind of newcomers and stuff, because I think he was doing it to save money. But it was kind of neat because then you really could visualize them as those roles, and you wouldn't be like, oh, that's so-and-so from this other show or whatever. You really just kind of got into them and their character. And I thought all of them just really like grew into their characters and did pretty awesome.
Yep.
Yeah.
So What did you think about the series finale?
Oh, one of the best series finales of all time. No joke.
Right.
So I gotta set it up for him.
If you can't get good, solid dialogue, I mean, I'm sure the dialogue and the plot and everything was good, but if you really want to top something off, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, so I gotta set it up.
Okay.
So what happened was this land baron guy comes in, says that there was some treaty with the Indians that went bad and it had something to do with the land. Long story short, he said, I own the whole town. So, and then he had actually legal papers to back it up.
The land.
Yeah, and then he even brought in the U.S. Army because the people said, we're not leaving, we're going to refuse. So he brought in the U.S. Army, and there was about to be a big, gun battle, which obviously the U.S. Army would have won. But somehow they begged for a little more time, and they said, okay, we'll vacate if you give us, 24 hours or whatever it was.
Until Sunday after church.
So the Army lieutenant or colonel or whoever it was that was in charge, the guy that owned the land wanted him off immediately, but he said, no, we're going to let him do this, and we're going to give them their 24 hours. So anyway, the men of the town got together and discussed, what are we going to do? And they decided that this guy...
Why did they decide it? It was the main character of the show that decided it for them.
I don't remember.
Oh, well, she had just gotten herself like a mansion she inherited from a good friend of hers. And so she was particularly upset about leaving the town because, this is Laura, who's now Laura Wilder. She married Zaldamo, otherwise known as Almanzo. But the robber baron who was coming to the town liked her house a lot and thought, oh, I'm going to set up residence in this house. And she was infuriated about that. So she got so mad, she started smashing her windows. And while they were at the meeting, she told them, you know what? That really made me feel better.
Yeah, so that kind of got their gears turning. And then one guy said, I got a whole load of dynamite back at my place, because I think it had something to do with his job.
Yeah, he was hauling the load for the road.
So they all got together, and the whole town decided to dynamite all of their buildings. And if you read the background of this, it was kind of, they kind of wrote the script for real life, because when Little House set up their shop there, this was filmed all in California for the most part.
Yeah,
and they actually built all of these. They built the town of Plum Creek, essentially, just out on a ranch somewhere in California. And their deal with the ranch owner was whenever the series ended, they would return the ranch to exactly, how it was before. So they had to tear down all the buildings. So in the show, they dynamited all the buildings, and they actually did it in real life. So when you're watching those buildings blow up on the show, that actually happened. Those are really blowing up, and it was pretty spectacular. And of course, they did it in this it was really awesome. So what happened is the land robber baron guy, he was going to do this to like 3 or 4 other towns, and so he went out and summoned all the mayors to show that he invited all the mayors to watch him take over this town. He thought that would make sure that they didn't provide any resistance, because he was going to show them, hey, you either just move out or you watch the army's going to come in and force you out, just like this town of Walnut Grove. I said Plum Creek for it. Anyway, Walnut Grove. And so here comes all the mayors on their little, horse and buggies, and then the army's there, and then the guy comes and he says, I'm here to get my town, and the people will say, okay, but just one thing first. And then they just... Oh, no, they didn't see it. I think they arrived right at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, after they were blown up.
But the great thing is that the other mayors of the other towns they were going to take over all came to see this town.
Yeah.
And so then after it was decimated, they got together and they said, guess what? If you want to take over our towns, this is what is going to happen to our towns as well. So they ended up blowing up their own town, Walnut Grove, but they saved all the areas around them.
The other towns, because then the guy decided not to take over the towns because he thought he was going to get a pre-made town. He wasn't really into just the land.
Right.
So
I bet that all these farmers and blacksmiths and whatnot, I bet they got good jobs in the neighborhoods surrounding them.
Right. Yeah, they were probably well received. But anyway, you got to watch the last episode, if nothing else, just to watch all these glorious homes and hotel and the mercantile all get blown up. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was great. So, are you sad that you have binge watched this and now there's no more?
Yeah.
It's like become part of our lives.
Yeah, it's like every day an episode or two during dinner, and yeah, I'm gonna miss it. And there's really just no other shows like that out there.
No.
Yeah, and it's great because you're gonna get a good Christian message, good family values, and a lot of entertainment,
Yeah, it was a very fine
Yeah.
show.
Yep, excellent show. I'm gonna miss it. If you have any suggestions for any shows that you think we should binge watch next, please leave them in the comments below.
Yeah,
Maybe
searching.
if you know of any shows that are like this that are kind of on the level of Little House, that would be awesome. And part of the reason we started too is if you don't know, Little House began right here in Kansas. That's where the show started anyway. At the very
beginning. That's right. The pilot.
Yeah, the very first episode they went to Kansas. If they didn't stay in Kansas very long. Things were a bit rough here for them, and so then they ended up heading up to Minnesota, is where most of the episodes.
Well,
took
they
place.
were filmed. Yeah, they. Are you talking about real life?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, no, yeah, I was. I was saying like.
Okay, in real life, it was rough for them in Kansas as well.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, they did plan on filming the series here, but it didn't work out.
Yeah. Yeah, so most of the series takes place, well, in California, but supposedly in Minnesota.
Yeah, well, they were in actual life, the actual Laura Ingalls. She and her family were kicked out of their homestead in Kansas because of a Indian reservation agreement from the government. So then the government cleared out all the settlers. So that's why they had to leave.
Yeah. And not on the show, but in real life, they lived in several states, including Wisconsin. And I'd like to point out I'm drinking this delicious Wisconsin beverage called Klarbrunn. It's sparkling water. It's delicious. Flavored sparkling water.
Yes, that's our favorite.
Yeah, we love this. Actually, I've never seen this until we moved to Kansas.
I think I like it just because of the name, too.
Klarbrunn.
Yeah, that's a great name.
I think it's German or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, any final thoughts?
This was one TV binge where we didn't actually waste our lives. I think we learned something.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of important lessons to be learned from Little House, I would say.
Right.
Yeah. So if you're looking for a binge watch show, I know we watched it through Peacock, and you can get the full Peacock streaming service for like $5 a month.
Yeah. It's pretty cheap.
Yeah, $5 a month, and you get access to a whole bunch of stuff, mostly crap, but a few good things like Little House. So,
right.
Yeah, we're looking for some cheap entertainment, and we don't like to pay the whole like Hulu and all that. And plus, we don't like to really support all the stuff on a lot of those streaming services. So anyway, this was a cheap way, and it let us watch all the episodes of Little House, which we thoroughly enjoyed.
Great. And also let us know before you leave what you think of our space chairs.
Space chairs. We got new space chairs for our set here.
So thank you so much for watching. It was a lot of fun to do this podcast. I love talking about this type of stuff.
And thanks to our buddy John Tanis from Dispatch, which is a little tiny district out in the middle of nowhere. And he is...
full of charming people.
Yes. They have just the cutest little church with like so many fun people there and some of the friendliest people we've ever met. And John is a farmer who can really tickle the keys, as you could see in our intro. So shout out to John. Thanks for providing that beautiful intro for us, and thanks for being a good friend. All right, I guess that's all we have for you this time. So thanks for watching, and we really appreciate if you like, comment, and subscribe to our channel, and to help these videos be made possible. God bless. So we're parked out by the lake to let you know that if you liked that, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Also, if you go to the description below, you can find a link to our online store where you can buy all kinds of fun corn-fed merchandise, like this one-of-a-kind t-shirt. Or if you want to go a step further and support us in our corn-fed endeavors, you can buy us an ear of corn or two by
Going to patreon.com/cornfedlife, and for as little as $1 a month, you can help support some starving YouTubers.
Thanks for watching.
We thought we would leave you with a little video of our own little house on the prairie.